Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to What You Can Be with a PhD, a monthly seminar that is a collaboration between the Office of Postdoctoral Affairs as well as with the Center for Career Engagement here at Washington University. Um, and today we have the amazing and wonderful Dr. Olaya Fernandez Gayol. How'd I do with that pronunciation? Yes. All right. So Dr. Gayol is a senior scientific content specialist at bioarchive slash medRxiv and open archive. It like has three names, I guess.
I can explain later if you
Excellent.
want.
Wonderful. That is why you are here as the expert and not me. So Dr. Gayol obtained her PhD in neuroscience from the Universitat Autónoma de Barcelona in Spain, where she studied the central regulation of body weight in mouse models. Afterwards, she did her postdoctoral research at Columbia University Medical Center in New York on characterizing BDNF circuits in the amygdala and their role in food intake, anxiety, and stress. During this time, she also worked for the postdoc community to develop professional development programming and became passionate about helping other scientists secure their professional goals. I love that. Olaya joined bioRxiv and medRxiv in the late 2021, where she is part of a team that screens newly submitted preprints as well as contributing to data analysis and advocacy projects. The variety of tasks that tap on the skills she acquired whilst being a researcher makes the work fulfilling and constantly entertaining, I'm sure. And she enjoys being part of the infrastructure, allowing other scientists to communicate their discoveries immediately. Also, as a fun side note, the way that Olaya and I met was actually when I interviewed at Columbia University for, I think, a program manager or an assistant director position in the Office of Postdoc Affairs. I'm currently at WashU, which suggests maybe I didn't get that job, but that's fine. However, at the time, she was a postdoc, and we decided to do a little podcast together. And so she and I have actually spent hours on Zoom together, but have only met once in, was it Indianapolis? Is that where we met? Yes, only met once in person over the probably 4 or 5 years that we've known each other. So thank you so much for being here, Olaya. It's really exciting. And for everyone in the Zoom space, how the structure of today will go is we will give Olaya a few minutes to talk about herself and how she got to where she is now. And then I will open up with a few questions for her while all of you write your insightful questions into the chat. And Kyle Ferris will be monitoring the chat and collecting those questions. We'll also give you an opportunity to unmute and ask your own questions, should you prefer to do it that way. All right, so without further ado, Olaya Fernandez Gayol, I pass it to you.
Thank you, Peter. I'm so glad that you invited me for this. I loved talking about my career and discoveries and how I got where I'm at. And so if anything I say can help you all figure out where you want to go, I'm gonna call that a success. So like Peter said, I'm from Spain. I studied in Spain. My undergrad and PhD were in the same institution because I'm lazy like that. And a through line in my career has been up until a point, I kind of like rode the wave of sort of starting as a good student and just doing the next thing. And so my PhD was essentially offered to me by one of my senior year instructors. He approached me and I was like, Sure, that sounds like an interesting project. You're a decent human being, which is not always a given. And he was willing to wait for a year because I was going to do a year abroad at UC Davis. And he was like, "Yeah, sure, we can wait for you, and you can do your PhD here." And I'm like, "Yeah, you're gonna pay me for 4 years to like play around in the lab doing something that sounds moderately interesting? Sure." So that's how I started in the academic pipeline. A lot of thought went into that. My university had essentially no career coaching for undergrad, so it was sort of like the thing to do. Of course, you got good grades, you're going to do a PhD. During my PhD, there was also essentially no career advice. I graduated in 2017. I think things are changing a little bit now in Spain, but definitely not at the same level of opportunities and sort of just acknowledging that not everyone will be a PI and sort of being like forward about that. I knew I didn't want to be a PI when I was doing my PhD, but again, sort of in the line of not really knowing what the options were and sort of being still okay with working in the lab. I had the opportunity again to do a postdoc. Did not do much sort of proactive research. I found my postdoc through a postdoc at University of Washington, where I spent 3 months doing like with a fellowship during my PhD. And like 4 years later, she emailed me out of the blue saying that her PhD advisor was looking for a postdoc at Columbia University. It was a somewhat related field. She worked with models of anorexia, but it was again like food intake and stress, which had been part of my focus during my PhD. So I was like, New York? Sure. I'll go do a postdoc with someone that has been more or less vetted by someone I trust and respect. You can't really see it, but these are all playbills. So that really, the fact that it was in New York City really affected my decision to like just jump in at the opportunity of doing that postdoc. It turned out I was there for 3 years, including, so I started in late 2018. So I essentially had a full year and then COVID hit. And then I went back after COVID. Things were not great before COVID, but I had to kill all my mice before lockdown. Before that, for that year, I had essentially done sort of like troubleshooting, setting up techniques, and trying to get things to a workable place. The models were not as shiny as promised in the interviews and in the papers that had been published. And then everything had to be terminated before the pandemic, which meant that I could just like do learning how to code during the lockdown, which was a great opportunity, and I'm happy to talk more about uh, that side of things later if you have specific questions. But it meant that when we went back, really there wasn't a lot to come back to, and things also like deteriorated in the lab with the ambiance and how people were interacting with each other. And so it got to a point where I wasn't really happy in the lab. I hadn't really made any significant progress. And then, and I'm not kidding, 3 years in, the first time I had an individual development plan with my PI at her request, um, I sort of shared with her, well, maybe like I've been exploring sort of things outside of academia. I've been doing a lot of work with the Postdoc Association. And at that time, I was looking into being an academic administrator. So essentially having a job like Peter here. Um, and in her next breath, she says, well, so next year we're not going to be able to renew your contract. This is a year in advance, so I think that's like lucky me. I got a year's notice. But that was significantly earlier than my visa paperwork had sort of suggested. I thought I had an extra year to figure things out. So that day I'd go home and I started applying for jobs. And that's how I found the job that I have now, which is like I started as content specialist at bioRxiv and medRxiv. Initially, I did not want to apply to that job because on paper it sounded extremely boring, and the worst part of research, which is to me reading papers. Uh, so I was actually pretty reluctant to apply, but two different people sent me the ad and encouraged me to go. And it's great that I did because one, it was one of the best interview experiences I've ever had. Because they did a sort of like day in the job type thing. So I could actually see what that reading papers was actually like. And it turned out that you actually don't have to read the paper. You need to like skim it like a real scientist. And then talk with your colleagues to discuss how it like how you can apply the policies that we have in a sort of fair and quick way. But it was the teamwork aspect of it that I really had missed during my time at Columbia. I was like completely alone. And I really missed that part of working with other people that I did have during my PhD. So I got the job and I've been at it for 4 years now. So I think that's a good intro that hopefully has prompted some questions in people's minds.
I love it. Thank you so much for that introduction. I guess I should preface this. Hi, everyone. My name is Peter Myers. I am the Associate Director of Postdoctoral Education and Partnerships at the Office of Postdoc Affairs. And yes, when I first met Olaya, we were talking about about positions like this, and this is what we want to do with our lives. Um, I'm struck initially by how you came upon your postdoc. I think that's really interesting because to me it just kind of highlights the power of networking because I think you said it was like 4 years later, all of a sudden this opportunity came up. And so I wonder if maybe you could talk a little bit more about like, do you have any networking strategies that you've been using, or was that just a random fluke in your life?
I mean, I guess not a fluke since I also kind of got my PhD like that.
True.
I did not get my job through a specific connection, even though I had met the people who interviewed me, and they acknowledged to me that that at least made me sort of like a recognizable face. Like you
Mm.
show up to the interview and having met the people who might hire you, it's never if you made a decent impression, neutral to good impression on them, it's not gonna hurt your chances. So I guess I never did like the like at meetings and stuff, just like cold introducing myself to people. I'm kind of like a weird mix of introvert and extrovert. I can talk a lot with small groups of people and if I'm comfortable, but like just that big like event where you're trying to just like pitch yourself to someone, I'm not like super into that. But I think if that's you, like if you're like I don't have any issues like introducing myself to the big shot PIs and talking about my research. If that's you, more power to you. That can work. What I found useful for myself is when I've been in situations where I've worked with people or so for example, the my now colleagues, someone from the Postdoc Society at Columbia invited them to give a talk. I was the president of the society at that point. I was at the talk, and I was sort of just like there and introduce myself to them. I had been there, sort of visible, and so that type of networking, I think, can also be really powerful. But essentially, like working with people and not discounting anyone in the food chain. Like, be nice to everyone. Be nice to the secretary, to the administrators, to the technician, to the PhD students, because those people are going to then go out into the world. And when they hear about an opportunity, they might think of you and they might email you 4 years later, telling you about it. So that's how I've sort of just lived my life, and I guess you can call it networking in some way, but um that's what works for me because I am extremely uncomfortable with walking up to someone and just like introducing myself.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that. And I guess I'll say you heard it here, everyone. Any human interaction can be considered networking. So let's try to be nice to each other and kind and courteous to one another. All right. So we do have some questions coming in. Um, and before we dive into them, I do want to get one question in, which is what was your original career vision when you were starting your PhD? And obviously, we know where you are now, but how has it, I guess, changed over time? And how has being an international superstar scholar impacted that career trajectory?
Um, so as I sort of briefly touched on, when I was doing my PhD, there wasn't much of a plan. So I'm gonna go with when I was a postdoc.
Okay.
Because at that point, this applies, like, if you're doing your PhD, you beat me to it, you're thinking about your future, I applaud you. So this still applies. It's just that I'm a late bloomer in many aspects of my life. But so I was doing my postdoc, and I did know for sure that I didn't want to be a PI. So I essentially approached my postdoc as an extended career exploration thing, and that was part of my decision to take the New York thing because I was like, I'm gonna be at a top-notch Ivy League institution. And like at the very least, I'm gonna be able to go to talks, meet people. I didn't even know about postdoc associations at that point, but I found the Postdoc Association, and that was kind of my gateway to the world of possibility that opened up. And so I became very involved with that and started sort of doing networking sessions for postdocs. I was in the networking committee at first, so essentially organizing happy hours. But then that also moved on to a more communications side of things, where I was in charge of a newsletter, so communicating information to postdocs, and I was like, I think I like the helping scientists do their job part more than actually the doing the science myself part. And so that's when I started looking into academic administration. So again, like Peter's and Kyle's jobs, sort of like PhD advising, postdoc advising, that type of thing. And so when I started digging into that line, that's when the international superstardom part came into play, which is that those jobs will not sponsor you for the visa that you need to actually work in the country. So that was a big blow. At that point, I did not have the option of applying for a green card for like scientific merit. I was like, I haven't done anything that would be shiny in a green card application during this postdoc, and it just didn't work out. And it was pretty frustrating talking to people who were internationals and had that job, and everyone was like, yeah, I married an American. I was like, well, that's really helpful. Turns out I ended up doing the same thing, but I didn't do it in time to get the job that I really wanted. Also, not a good reason to marry someone just to not get a job. Um, but yes, so that was sort of the first hurdle in sort of realizing my dream career path. But when I saw this job and I got over the hurdle of like, oh my God, this is just reading, um, it turns out that it's still doing a lot of the same things of allowing scientists to do their job better. We're putting up science online within days of getting their manuscripts so that scientists can communicate their findings in a timely manner. And we are also facilitating feedback mechanisms from the community to those scientists. We're convincing more people to use our free service. And so it checks a lot of the boxes in a completely different way that I hadn't considered. So I think that
Great.
answers the question.
Yeah, love it. Thank you so much. And it helps us easily dovetail into the next question here. So this is from Jess in the chat. And they're asking what exactly your job consists of. What are the goals and functions of your position in the wider org? Um, what's the strategy, structure, and mission of BioArchive?
Mhm. So we are a preprint server, a non we're part of Open Archive. So the three names that all end in archive. Um, Open Archive is our newly founded parent organization, which is a nonprofit organization with the mission of disseminating science openly and freely. There's probably a mission statement that I should have looked up. But it's essentially communicating science openly and freely. And so the way we're currently doing that specifically is through the preprint servers, bioRxiv, and medRxiv. So the 2 cents about preprint servers is it's a website where scientists submit their manuscripts that have not yet been published in a journal. They send them to us, and then we do some basic screening checks that are not peer review, but are meant to ensure that it's either biology for bioRxiv or clinical sciences, so human health for medRxiv, and that is not dangerous to the public in a way that could like cause harm or like a public alarm if the results were to be wrong, since we're not doing peer review. That turns out to be like the doing harm to the public and like and cause public alarm. It's like pretty, it has to be really bad. So we may post things that are wrong and maybe are just not like not in bad faith necessarily, but just like happen to be wrong. But that's we are trying to allow the community to just see that science as soon as the authors want the world to see it, and not 2 years after the journal has managed to find time to deal with it. Uh, so again, the goal of bioRxiv and medRxiv is to put up for free as much science as we can within our scope. So my job as a content specialist, I'm part of the content team. And so the content team is the second layer of scrutiny in the screening process of papers. So when an author submits a manuscript to our submission system, which looks a lot like a journal submission system, but like pretty simple, like it's very much simplified, but essentially it's a journal submission system. We have some freelance screeners who will look at the submission and check for the ultra basic checks that we have based on sort of like structure of like there has to be a PDF. The PDF needs to have a title and an abstract. You would be surprised the amount of the submissions that do not fulfill this very simple criterion. But then they also check for some of the scope things. So we do get submissions that are just out of scope. They are science, but they're, I don't know, pure mathematics or really out into the social sciences. We try to be as accommodating as possible, but sometimes people just submit to the wrong preprint server. So we have that first line of screening. If the screeners flag something for further scrutiny, that's when it comes to my team. So we're all PhD holders in different areas of biology. And we take another look and then we discuss it amongst ourselves, which was the part that I really liked about the process is that you're never solely responsible for, I mean, you are responsible for some decisions where you're just like, I know what I have to do, applying the rules, but sometimes we get edge cases that push the limits of what we thought was possible. And so we discuss it amongst ourselves. Sometimes we even raise it to the next layer of the organization, which is sort of our leadership, the people who run the show, who also have PhDs and are former researchers, and also experience in the publishing world. And so we discussed that, and that's sort of like the reading papers part of the job. We also interact with authors a lot. We get a ton of emails every day. People who have different issues, different questions about their service, issues with their submission if we return it. And so we do have a customer service team, but sometimes people have questions that the content team needs to address. So we also communicate with authors a lot. And then we have we find time somehow to have some side projects that involved either some data analysis of submission numbers in different categories. Sometimes we want to look at sort of historical trends or we're seeing shifts in certain things and we try to pull data from our database to try and figure out how things are changing, what affects something that we may have done, did or did not have. And we also try to convince people to use preprints more. And so that's a more sort of like advocacy side. We have a project where we do webinars at different institutions. So we also do some data crunching in preparation for those. And so that's more of like a related to what I was doing in the lab. Like you look at data and you make graphs and you make presentations. Exactly the same thing. Um, but yeah, so I do know sort of to Jess's question in particular, There are preprint servers in the sciences. So Archive is sort of the equivalent to bioRxiv in the social sciences. It's also a nonprofit preprint server, I think. And also a little bit removed, but like my job is not that different to a journal editor. I mean, it is different, but it's in that spectrum of jobs. Like it's closer to a journal editor than a lab scientist, for example. But also other, like there's a lot of nonprofit organizations in the open science realm. So different initiatives to try and promote the open sharing of data, of papers. So there's a lot of entities that are in that sphere. So if that's something that you're interested in, it doesn't necessarily have to be on the science dissemination side, but there's a lot of other players in the nonprofit open science environment.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that explanation of like what you do and open science and preprint servers, because I think many of us have heard of them, but unless you've interacted with them, you might not really understand what they are. So thinking about all the skills that you just described in your daily work, Vivian is asking, were there skills that you need to learn at your current job, or did you already have relevant experience on your CV? And if not, how did you stand out among other applicants to get your current position?
So starting with the end, I of course don't, I mean, I know I got the job. Um, I also know based on the recent hiring process that we have done that lasted for at least 6 months, that I think the pool of candidates when I applied was not the same as when like this recent search, which included we did remote interviews, and so that obviously expands the pool of people that you can hire. It turned out the position ended up being in person anyway, so we had to turn down a lot of people, and that's why it went on for 6 months. But anyway, going back to the position, it did require a PhD, which was the reason they were allowed to sponsor a visa and part of the reason I applied for the job. So it did require a PhD in the biological sciences. So that was like check. And then the rest of the requirements were actually not. I could try to pull up the ad to remind me, but it wasn't anything super. I'm pulling it up. I still have it. Requirements. Uh, it was a PhD, yes, in the biomedical discipline, an understanding of the publication process in the biomedical field. I literally said, I am a scientist and I have submitted papers. I mean, I didn't have any sort of actual editorial experience in a journal. So I think that so the lesson here is when you start working from a job description and you're trying to tailor your materials to it, spin it in whatever way you can to make the things that they're asking for somewhat relevant to your experience. So but don't lie. Um, but sort of relating to the understanding of the publication process, also like writing and critiquing scientific manuscripts, all of that, if you don't have the like journal experience and like actual job experience, it's like as a working scientist, you have written some portion of a manuscript at least, like maybe You didn't get to like actually write the first draft because your PI was a micromanager and you never got to do that. But at least maybe you edited or that you interacted with the draft in some way. You created the data. You thought about the story in some way. You received the journal emails at some point. Like you do have, regardless of how involved you actually were, you do have some awareness of the scientific publishing process just by having been a working scientist. So that's essentially what I mentioned to that point. Then they ask for like excellent. I feel like some of these are like so cliche. Excellent written and verbal communication skills. It's like sure, yes. And so to that I did talk a lot about my experience with the postdoc society because again for the type of job that this was the actual lab experience wasn't like that relevant. They just needed you to have a an understanding of the biological sciences, but like it's not like applying for a tenure track job where like your science actually matters. Here it's like the other things that you may have done that were more relevant. So all those events that I organized, the meetings that I ran, the newsletters that I sent, like all of that I could mention as evidence for the things that they were requiring. Interpersonal skills, again, sort of dealing with a group of postdocs to try and promote the activities that we were doing, teamwork. I did talk about the teamwork environment in my PhD lab, which was very much like a tight knit. We all help each other in our experiments, and how I missed that. To try and sort of say it's like I actually value this because I had it and then I didn't, and now I'm sad. And so and they also said excellent organization and prioritization skills. So again, during my postdoc, even if nothing actually like was a high scientific impact, I still had to juggle multiple projects and I got dumped sort of like admin organizational thing with the histology lab core where I had to like organize a system for them to get requests from users. So it seems like the most random thing, but anything that you can say that like, hey, here are all the different projects that I was handling at that time. A lot of these you can see are sort of like soft skills. That I think the good thing with those is that in job ads they tend to have these very generic things, and that's an opportunity for you to like spin it the way that you can. So yeah, and then I mean they asked for like editorial experience, desired, did not have that, did not affect the fact that I got the job at all. So another lesson, don't really follow the requirements to the letter. If they like even if it I mean if it says a PhD is required, they will turn you down if you don't have a PhD. But everything else, anything that is like experience related or like skill related, I would say like spin it in a way that you can based on the experience that you have. And if there's one or two things that you're not like fully checking, it does like if you really want to apply for the job, apply for the job.
I love that. Yes, I fully agree. I forget the exact statistics, but we know that basically hetero white men have are
Do
like, I
that.
can do 40% of that requirement, I shall apply. And then everyone else is like, ooh, I can only do 90%. I should not apply. Um, that is an unfortunate psychological barrier that we have as a culture, and I challenge you all to push against that as much as you can. Um, So thinking about those transferable skills and thinking about how you spun it, can you talk a little bit about like did you receive any training or did you attend workshops on how to spin your transferable skills or your soft skills or how to find them? Because I know like in my vantage point being in the career development space, I have a lot of thoughts on it, but looking back, hindsight's 2020. I don't think I knew what I was doing when I was in my postdoc or graduate studies.
Um, I mean, I did attend a lot of workshops that the Columbia University postdoc office put out. They had wonderful programming. The Postdoc Society, which was funded by the postdoc office, but entirely run by postdocs, also did workshops and a lot of what I think can be called experiential learning, where by volunteering in the society and like putting events out and like sending newsletters or doing initiatives that you're passionate about, you're getting those skills as well. But I did go to a lot of workshops, and it was maybe not mentioned like I not in the way that I said it, just like spin it whatever way you can. But they do put the thought in your head of trying to sort of take a step back and try to identify what the skills, sort of those like basic skills, like those one-liners that you see in the job applications, like excellent writing and communication skills. Like, of the things that you do or that you would like to do, which of those are you getting with each activity? And try to like open your mind and be stretchy with your definitions of what could fall under each thing. And so I think that did help me sort of just hearing again and again, like you need to be aware of your soft skills, and like having a PhD is a lot about the soft skills, not just like I know a lot about transgenic mice or like immunology, which I don't anymore. So but the skills remain. Because it's a kind of like use it or lose it. The very specialized knowledge, if you're not using it, you will I will forget. But the skills and the writing, the organizational things, the all that more like admin side of things and the human interaction, if you can do that in many different ways, so that's a muscle that you can keep exercising and you will not forget that.
Absolutely. And small plug for the CCE. I believe they have workshops or at least some one-on-one meetings where they can sit down with you and help you as a PhD or postdoc to identify those transferable skills that you are using on a daily basis. I promise you, you are. But you've used them in one way your entire career and they can help you identify like, but there's also this other way you can apply this. So, um, if you need help with that, please reach out to Kyle on this call and he'd be happy to support you with that. Or me, I'm also happy to. But one thing that I know I ran into when I was first going on the job market after my graduate program was explaining the value of your PhD to employers or to clients who might not immediately understand the relevance of not of your research academic work in a non-academic environment. Do you have any tips or tricks for people on how to best kind of rebrand your experience to a non-academic setting?
Yeah. I mean, again, disclaimer, my job did require a PhD, so I did luckily did not have that issue. But in like all the myriad seminars and stuff that I went to, this does come up. Um, I would say that I would focus on the ability to independently research a problem. Well, first of all, the ability to identify what the problem is, uh, independently find a solution to it by doing research, but also being able to work with people to actually fix it or ask for help at the points where you need to do that. And I feel like that scenario is very common across disciplines, uh, and businesses, enterprises, whatever. Um, so I would probably put it that way, is the process of working things out and the tenacity to work through it. Um, and that double sort of the both the independent and the teamwork, which I feel like sometimes like when you see like the ads or whatever, they're asking for both things, and you do need to sell both. Like you can't give the impression that, oh, I'm totally a worker, but like kind of not giving them the other side and maybe letting them think, oh, this person cannot absolutely work on their own. And the reverse, like if you just come out as, oh, I can do everything by myself, and they really are thinking of like this like teamwork mentality, they're like, oh, but they wouldn't like integrate with the team. So I think it's useful to sort of mention both of those things together, and in a way that is like detached from your specific research. It's just talking about looking for problems, finding solutions, being creative. Because I think people forget how creative like science can be, like especially coming from a place where we didn't have a lot of money to buy the fanciest things. You do a lot of DIY and try to come up with ways of not spending your PI's hard-earned grant money. So if you have experiences to that effect, like trying to tell stories that show those sort of like skills that the employer might be looking for at the sort of high level, I think can also help them get past the, oh, this is like a super academic person that like cannot interact with other humans and um is of no value to us.
I love that. Yeah, I would wager the majority, if not everyone on this call has had to cobble together aspects of a research experiment from things that their PI had around the lab. And so we're all great problem solvers and we're scrappy, we'll say. Um, but so we have about 10 more minutes. Oh, we just got a question here from Emily. When is it appropriate to post a manuscript on archive instead of submitting to a peer-reviewed journal? I'm considering trying this, but my main concerns are impact factor still plays an important role in evaluation within my organization, and two, some mainstream academic publishers may not accept manuscripts that have already been posted as preprints.
So, so just a clarification, Archive is the preprint server specifically for physics, maths, computer science, etc. We're not affiliated with them. The concept still applies. So if Archive is your scope appropriate server, the question is still valid. Um, so first, I would say submitting to a preprint server is not and should not be incompatible with publishing at a peer-reviewed journal. It's just, if I recently came up with this analogy, it works if you're a gamer. If you're not, it doesn't work. It's like early access. So you're just allowing the scientific community to see your science as soon as you're ready to share it. So, and then you submit it to the journal. You can do that at the same time, or you can actually take advantage of the platform that being on a preprint server allows you. Archive posts like millions of papers. For us, we're currently at, what is it, like 4,000 a month or something like that, for a total of almost 700,000 papers. We have like 10 million views total every month on the site. And so being on that type of platform and having a link that you can share with anyone gives you the ability to like have actual evidence of the thing that you have done as soon as you have done it. Because if you just submit to a journal, you don't get a link. You can just, you do the thing that people do in their CV, which is submit it to X journal. But people can't actually see that what you submitted. And it may be stuck in peer review hell for 2 years and the thing is done. So the having it on a preprint server just gives you the opportunity to put it on a grant, put it on your CV, put it in just a job application. Maybe in your cover letter, you can just like mention that. Uh, and and then people can go and look at it. And so, especially for PhD students, when you have to like you graduate at one point and then you have to go in the job market, and this also applies to postdocs that are like finishing up their postdoc, you can't always wait for the journal article to appear. So by having the opportunity to share early what you did, if like the thing is that yes, it's not peer reviewed, but at certain stages of your career, the thing that's important is that another scientist can actually go and read your paper and actually evaluate your paper on its own merits, regardless of like the name of the journal. The issues that Emily brought up are still, especially the impact factor and how much a lot of organizations are still like dead focused on like the impact factor journals. This is still an issue. We're making progress. And so I think, I mean, there are places that you can use as examples that you can advocate to your institution and the higher ups to tell them, hey, here are all these funders, like HHMI. I think we all have heard of that little funder called and research organization called the Howard Hughes Medical Institute. They just mandated preprints for their grantees, and they have to post with us in bioRxiv because we have a sort of like a name in the biology field as a reputable nonprofit preprint server. So if there are all these organizations that are thinking that it's just good practice to share your science early and openly and for free, maybe your organizations should also consider that. I also am of the sort of belief that just because they don't say they will consider it, you shouldn't put it on your CV. Like they can't like ban that you put it on your CV. I mean, I guess they could, but like if that's what you have, if it's either nothing or a preprint, I would put the preprint on my CV. Because then you might get someone who's evaluating your promotion or your job application who actually will be like, huh, this person has kindly shared their manuscript with me. I'm gonna go take a look. And we have heard, especially from postdocs applying for tenure track positions, that having that preprint on their CV has actually made a difference and got them the job because people can actually read the science and can make decisions for themselves. Regarding, I very quickly want to address the issue about publishers. Actually, most reputable mainstream academic publishers will accept manuscripts that have been posted as preprints. That said, they should have a preprint policy on their author guidelines. A lot of the sort of like Elsevier, um, all the nature portfolio, they have all these author guidelines. If you search for preprints, there should be a section that explains the preprint policy. At least in biomedical sciences, most, and I will say again, reputable publishers. We all know who I'm talking about when I like. There's a lot of bad journals. Um, will actually accept your preprint. They might say you have to tell us that there's a preprint. They might have rules on what you can do with the subsequent versions after peer review. Our recommendation to authors is always check the policies of the journal and play nice to them. Like, don't try to, like, they're not going to be out to get you, but like, if they tell you you have to disclose that it's a preprint, they just mention it in your cover letter. But again, I would, and I'm very biased here, but I would now not submit to a journal that does not have a preprint policy.
I love that. Thank you so much. We have 2 minutes. I know you have to run at the top of the hour. So, a final question for you, in 1 minute or less. What's the most important piece of advice you can share with our audience as they navigate their own career paths?
So I would say like don't be afraid to explore, like go to all these like programming events and opportunities to learn more and try to like stretch the definitions of what you think you can be with a PhD. Once you get ready to apply for jobs, don't be afraid to apply to things that are not like your dream job. Because again, like I said, I ended up finding a very good job because I applied to it and then I saw what it actually entailed. Job descriptions can be like extremely boring and like not actually what the job is. And it's also good practice to like do interviews. And when you're preparing for interviews, you get better at doing interviews. So just doing the exercise of applying to things can be good, even though it's like a full-time job. Um, and then what I said before, just be nice to people and make friends normally. Like don't make like artificial friends. But just be nice to people and you never know where that opportunity might like come up and like, unfortunately or fortunately connections actually get a lot of jobs. Uh People are human and they will go with the person they know over the person they don't know. And so if you're the person they know, you got the job.
Absolutely. Well, round of applause for Dr. Olaya Fernandez Gayol. Thank you so much for being here and talking
My
with us
pleasure.
today. This has been lovely. I appreciate all of your insights, and as always, it's lovely to see you. Kyle has posted the next What You Can Be with a PhD. It will be with Dr. Susan Fisher on November 11th. And if you have any questions for us, we are happy to stay on and chat for a little bit. And if you would like to connect with Olaya, oh, she is.
Shameless plug. It is actually, I'm really proud of like the mini series that we did with Peter. Um who I enlisted because he was a an experienced podcaster and also interested in the same themes. But it's a short, I'll just plug it. It's a short series where we talked to people who had done a postdoc but were doing different things in their career and they were at different stages. All fantastic women. And so I would recommend that you give it a listen if you want. And if you want to reach out to me, I'm going to put my email in the chat and feel free to email me there. If you have follow-ups or questions, I'm happy to connect and engage further.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Go ahead, have a listen on finding answers and with the PhD. And we will hopefully see you in November. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Wong and Jessica, did you have any questions for us? Just in the middle of pipetting and unable to close your Zoom? All right. Perfect. All right. Well, thank you for your support with that. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for taking the lead. That was a good conversation, I think.
I
She's
hope
a very
so. We
good
didn't have as
speaker.
many questions coming through, but
No, more people, fewer questions.
yeah. But I mean, I also think like her work is applicable to everyone, but like poorly understood necessarily. And so a lot of like, this is what it is was needed.
Yeah, exactly.
But awesome.
Well,
Well, have a lovely rest of your Tuesday and we'll connect soon on next December, whatever we're doing in January.
yeah. Yeah.
Perfect. Sounds good. Have a good one.
You too. Take
Thanks,
care.
Kyle. Bye.